I'll be voting Democrat this November. I will never vote for Donald Trump. He is a goddamn murderer. What's up, guys? Acer Thorn here, and this is Purple Politics. So let's get to the first reason why I'm going to be voting Democrat. First of all, the economy. It is widely documented that the economy in the United States consistently does better under Democrat presidents. For that matter, I am aware that Biden has withdrawn from the race, but his successor, Kamala Harris, is still part of the Biden administration, so this next point is still pertinent. And that is that Biden has created 15 million jobs during his administration. 15 million people. And just for the record, that is a record for a single term. No other president in U.S. history, ever since these stats have been tracked, which, for the record, we've been tracking them since Harding in 1921. That's when we first started keeping track of these. So we've been keeping track of them for over a century now. There has not been a single president in the past century who has created as 15 million jobs, but Biden did it. The second highest the number of jobs created belongs to Bill Clinton, who in his first term, he created 11.5 million jobs, and then in third place is Bill Clinton's second term, which created 11.3 million jobs. So Democrats occupy the top 3 spots in terms of how many jobs were created per term. Now, in the debate between Trump and Biden in 2024, Trump gave the excuse that those are just, quote, rebound jobs. Well, here's the thing. Those are jobs, when he says rebound, he's talking about making up for the lost ground of the jobs he lost. Yeah, that's another thing here. Donald Trump, and I'm going to get to his being a murderer in a minute here. Trump is one of only 2 presidents since these stats have been taken to actually have had a total net loss of jobs. He literally ended his term with fewer jobs than he had when he started. The only other president in history since these stats have been collected to have that blemish on his record is Herbert Hoover, who was president at the start of the Great Depression. Yeah, Trump's economic performance is literally the worst in U.S. history since the Great Depression. Now, to be clear here, Trump does have a tiny bit of an extenuating circumstance, which is the pandemic. Yeah, the pandemic happened, sure, but all that really means, we have to remember that the first year or 2 of Biden's administration was also during the pandemic. Yeah, so yeah, Trump's administration began during was marked the start of the pandemic, but all that means is that Trump fumbled the pandemic. Biden picked up the slack. But okay, let's give Trump every conceivable benefit of the doubt and say that the jobs that he lost somehow don't count, even though they totally do. Trump only lost, only, as if that matters at all. Yeah, Trump only lost about 2.7 million jobs. So let's bump it up to 3 million even Steven, and subtract that from the total jobs that Biden created. Even if you take those away, Biden will still have created, actually created, not just regained the ones that were lost in the pandemic. He would have actually created over 12 million jobs, which means he still would have had the record for the most jobs created during a single presidential term, by about 500,000 jobs more than the second place, Clinton's first term. So Trump says that those are just rebound jobs. The jobs were always there, they just were dormant because of the pandemic. Even if you take those out, Biden still sets the record. So, yeah, I'm absolutely going to be voting for his hand-picked successor, if for no other reason than it's in my best interests, in the interests of being a working-class American. Now, if the Democrats take power, some people are afraid that they'll use that power to basically pass a whole lot of woke laws. Like, for example, passing laws that require people to use the pronouns that other people that other people choose for themselves, which, for the record, as far as trans rights are concerned, that's the only one that I really have a problem with, mostly because it's the only one that I actually have any real skin in the game on. I'm not participating in sports. I'm not even really a fan of sports. Even if I were participating, I'd just be participating in the men's division, not the women's division. And speaking of which, I'm not worried about trans people coming into my bathrooms, because, who cares about that? It's the women's bathrooms, it's the women's spaces that people are afraid of, and I don't have any real horse in that race. I actively don't care if you're doing this for your own benefit. I'm not one of those people who is just going to be going around on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying, you're not a real woman. I actively don't care if you do that, okay? Just leave me out of it is all I ask. And as far as kids getting hormones, I don't have kids. I'm not a parent. So, as I do have some fairly strong opinions on that, but at the same time, I don't exactly have a horse in the race. That's not to say that I don't feel like I have the right to an opinion, just that I'm not really that super invested in this one ultra-specific issue. I reserve the right to take a stance on issues in the future that I do have whether I have a horse in the race or not, but it's just on this one specific one, I don't care. So, overall, it's ultimately the pronouns thing that I really need to factor into my voting decision. Now, I've made it clear on this channel that I refuse to use they, them pronouns to refer to a singular person. because that's just how I've spoken my whole life. They, them has always been plural for me, and the only time it's ever been singular has been for an unknown person. Not just a person who's of androgynous gender, but a situation where I don't know who the other person is at all. Those are the only two circumstances in my entire life where I've ever used they, them pronouns, and I'm certain, and frankly, the fact that the vast majority of people who keep demanding that I use the quote unquote respect their pronouns are honestly just fucking assholes about the whole thing. So they basically just want me to. So basically, that just makes me less willing to change my speech patterns than I already was. Now, as far as the pronoun thing is concerned, how does that factor into my vote? Well, it is certainly possible that if Democrats gain a trifecta, especially a filibuster-proof trifecta, that they could pass laws that require people to start referring to others by the pronouns they choose, regardless of whether or not it's grammatically appropriate. I highly doubt it, but it's certainly a possibility I can't ignore. But even if it does come to that, 99% chance the Supreme Court will declare it as unconstitutional. That is just compelled speech. And it's not even content-neutral compelled speech either. So that law would likely receive strict scrutiny, which means it's gonna be declared unconstitutional pretty much on the spot. So overall, that one concern of mine, which is already a highly unlikely concern in any event, is one that even in the worst case scenario, it's just going to get declared unconstitutional anyway. Alright, now it's time for the main event. Donald Trump is a fucking murderer. Here's the thing. On January 6th, 2021, Donald Trump staged an insurrection at the Capitol. His goal was to overthrow the government, and his cronies' actions resulted in the deaths of 5 people. Some of them were just the rioters themselves, and they got what they fucking deserved. But at least one of them was a member of the Capitol Police, and he was killed in the line of duty by the rioters. All right, this was not a demonstration that just got a little out of hand. No, fuck that. This was an insurrection. Sure, they may not have moved and acted with military-like discipline and cohesion. Yeah, they may not have carried assault rifles and hid behind cover like actual soldiers are trained to do. But all that proves is that the insurrectionists, and yes, I will call them insurrectionists, were incompetent at what they were trying to do. But that still does not detract from the fact that the vast majority of them were indeed trying to overthrow the government. They may have been as incompetent as the wet bandits, but I think we can all agree that the wet bandits' bumblingness didn't make them any less guilty of their crimes when they ultimately got caught at the end of that movie. Alright? Whereas apologists look at the footage of insurrectionists wandering around aimlessly around the lobby like fucking tourists and see them just being a wee bit disorderly, what I see is them running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to find something to do in furtherance of their goals. Alright, they were likely all thinking to themselves, okay, I'm inside the Capitol, so, what do I do now? Their end goal was still the overthrow of the government. All right, they just didn't have a solid plan on how to make that happen. That doesn't make them not insurrectionists. That just makes them bumbling idiots. Big difference. All right, then we have Trump himself. Yes, I'm aware that the Supreme Court just declared he's above the law. But as far as my vote this November is concerned, I don't give a shit. The man stood back and allowed the rioters to do their thing for hours before finally enough pressure was put on him to send in the troops to stop it. And yes, I'm aware that he was never indicted for that part. Alright, no immunity necessary. He just never technically committed a crime when he failed to send in the troops immediately. Alright, DeShaney versus Winnebago County clearly says that failure to enforce isn't a crime in and of itself. But again, as far as my vote this November is concerned, I'd like you to take one guess as to exactly how many fucks I give about that legal technicality. Trump insisted that it was Antifa, not his boys, who were actually the ones doing the riot. First of all, I don't give a shit. And second, if that were true, that only gives Trump less excuse, not more, for why he didn't send in the troops immediately. Alright, if they weren't his boys, then what was his incentive to let them do their thing? So, no, Trump can 100% kiss my ass. And all 5 of those people who are dead because of that riot, their blood is on his hands. Donald Trump is a murderer. So, if any of you disagree with any of my points, I am willing to accept a challenge to a live stream debate. I'm going to provide a link to a form that you can fill out in the pinned comment of this video, if you are so inclined. Fill out that form, and I'll be in touch with you. You want to debate me on whether the Biden and Harris administration actually deserves credit for all these jobs they created? Debate me. You want to debate me on the pronoun thing? Sign up for that. You want to debate me on whether Donald Trump is a murderer? Debate me. Oh, you'd better bring some absolutely massive evidence on that last bit. But you're welcome to try. But in any event, that is my reasons why I'm going to be voting for Kamala Harris this November. I will. Admittedly, the economy thing had me already gravitated towards voting Democrat. But the fact of the matter is, I will never vote for Donald Trump. If Nikki Haley had gotten the Republican nomination this year, my vote this November would have been much more up in the air. Alas, that is not what happened, and therefore, my vote this November is 100% blue. So anyway, that was my take. If you disagree with me, by all means, post a comment. In the meantime, however, I am Acer Thorn, and this has been Purple Politics.